Good morning.
Good morning.
And I think that I do know this morning that Tom had told me that you're doing a project, let me just get my notes, about three things. You all know that you're doing this?
No.
You don't?
Tell us what they are, maybe we'll.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second, gang. I thought that I'm like one of the 58 people who've already done this with you. All right, so anyway, for the videotape and others who haven't been part of this, Tom, the dean, sent me a message that said he's thinking at least of asking people to think about things that are important to them. Does this ring a bell?
Yeah, last week.
Oh, good. So it's, Tom wrote, in this age, amidst the competing drives and desires of the world, what can we share about the things that are truly important to us? What are the things that we value, that inspire us, things that we go back to again and again? So that is what Tom told me was a theme that he wanted to pursue in the coming weeks, and I think some people have offered a few things. Tom had said 3 things that are important to them, that sustain them, things that they come back to again and again. So Tom asked me if I would share 3 things that I value or matter to me, and not so much that you would all say, oh, that's good, goodbye, but I think the idea would be that I'll share these things and maybe we'll then have a conversation and you'll say, I never thought of that, or that's the silliest thing I ever heard in my life, or whatever, okay? Because I guarantee you, I don't want to minimize this, but I devoted time to this, but this is not something I've thought about a lot. And the more I've thought about, I thought about it a little, so I came up with some things for this morning, but I think I'm going to keep thinking about it, and probably by next week say, you know, I should have said these 3 things. Anyway, I want to start then with a story. It's the story of this student who wants to, oh Liz, you're just in time. So, this is the story of a student who wants to get into rabbinic school. So he comes before the panel of people to be interviewed to get into rabbinic school, and he has really studied everything he could study, and he's as ready as he could ever be, and he's ready for the panel to ask every question. So a variety of questions are asked, and he is prepared well, and he answers what he thinks is appropriate. And finally, one of the greats on the rabbinic faculty, a man by the name of Abraham Joshua Heschel, who's a real person. Abraham Joshua Heschel asks him a question, and the question is, my boy, suppose you had to spend a week on a secluded desert island. What would you take with you? A week at a secluded desert island, what would you take with you? So the student looks at Rabbi Heschel piously, and he thinks furiously, and he says, I take with a Bible. And Heschel pauses and says, and nothing else? The student thinks again and says, I take with a Talmud so that I could study. And Heschel nods and says, a week at a secluded desert island. Is there anything else that you would take? And the student says, after thinking, I take with a prayer book so that I could pray during the week I was on the island. And at this point, Heschel looks at him kindly and says, my boy, all the things you mentioned are necessary. A Bible and a Talmud and a prayer book. But above all, I think for a week you must not forget to take with you a few sandwiches and maybe a sweater. So in that spirit, I have 2 sets of 3 things that I think are important to me. So I'm going to give you my first set of 3 things, which you will tell are a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I'm not so sure they're not real. I'll tell you those. And then I'm going to give you my next set of 3 things, and then invite your comment, okay? So, if I had to take 3 things on the journey of life, here are the first 3 things I would take on the journey of life. 1, 2, 3, and then I'll do another, okay? So, on the journey of life, my first 3 things would be, 1, family and friends. It's kind of like board, but that's 1. I take with my family and friends. 2, I would take with the weather this past Tuesday, May 29th at 1 p.m. Now, the weather on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, was not unlike today's weather right now. But just to remind you, the weather on Tuesday, May 29th at 1 p.m., totally blue sky. It was sunny. It was 75, maybe 80 degrees. There was a light breeze. And I love that kind of weather because that weather is conducive to living and breathing and smiling and believing. And then my third thing I would take with is the spirit of April 6th, 1950. Now, at that time, April 1950, the president was Harry Truman. In February, the animated movie Cinderella had come out, a Disney movie. And in May, the movie Annie Get Your Gun was going to come out. Around that week of April 6th and the first week of April 1950, a doctor by the name of Charles Bailey, an American heart surgeon, had made the first successful human test of an instrument to dilate one of the valves in the heart, which is going to be a very important discovery for medicine in the years to come. And researchers at MIT had showed the first photograph demonstrating the appearance of an atom with electrons going around and whatever. That had all happened. And on April 6th, 1950, I was born. So, on April 6, 1950, all of those things were happening, Truman and the discoveries, but on April 6, 1950, the possibilities of life were entirely unlimited. The script was not written, and the whole world was open, and anything could have happened. So, remember, the 3 things I want to have with me. On that day, the third of the things then, life was completely open, everything was possible, and that would be the third thing I would bring with me. So the 3 things to review I would have with me are family, friends, the weather of last Tuesday, which kind of one goes along with living, breathing, smiling, and openness, and then the spirit of April 6, 1950, which is that life is an unwritten script. And this afternoon can be different than any afternoon, and tomorrow can be different because there has been no tomorrow yet. Everything is open. So those are the 3 things I bring with me. Or, I got another 3 things and then I'll be quiet. The other 3 things are 3 quotes. It's a little more standard. So the 3 quotes I would bring with me are 1 from the Bible, or 1 from the Jewish prayer book, rather, which says, "O God, the soul that you have given me is a pure one." "O God, the soul that you have given me is a pure one." I bring that with because it's just like some of my other feelings about limitlessness and openness and possibility. I bring with a quote by Heschel, the rabbi in the first story. Heschel said, "The older I've become, the more I realize that it isn't so much how smart a person is, it's rather how kind a person is that matters above all else." And then a quote from Elie Wiesel, who once said, "What then are we humans? We are nothing but hope turned to dust." but the opposite is equally true. What are we humans? We are dust turned to hope. So I would also, if I could only bring three things with, I'd bring those three quotes. Oh God, the soul you have given me is a pure one. The older I get, the more I realize it's not how smart you are, but how kind you are. Or the other one that says human beings are essentially dust turned to hope. And I bring with those three quotes. And I invite your comment. What do you think? What would you bring with? What do you think of these alternate three things? What would you add, subtract?
Well, I'm worried you don't have a sandwich.
Oh,
Or you don't have any food, yeah.
yeah, well, you'll have, my family and friends would bring that.
Oh, so each person that you bring, would you get to bring three things with you?
I don't know, I don't
Is that
know
how that
how
works?
that's through. Any comments? I got you, I know, it's not written down, it's a lot easier when you can look that's written down, but the fourth thing would be not to waste paper, so two sides of one sheet, but not doing two papers.
I'm sorry to interrupt, does anybody have a white Honda? No?
I have a silver one,
No, it's definitely white.
I'll take the
Thank
white
you,
one.
sorry to interrupt.
Three things, I think a white, a silver, and a black Honda.
So what made you choose the quotes you chose?
What do you think? Oh, that's not good. Well, all the quotes are, what are they? They're all hopeful. They're all ultimately about hope and faith and belief and optimism. So they're all, somebody once said regarding rabbis, but it probably holds true for clergy, that you only really have 2 or 3 sermons in your whole life, and every sermon is about one of the 2 or 3 things you have to say, but they're all the same. So if I were to share with you the 7 or 8 sermons I've given at the church, without realizing, I bet you they're all the same. But they're not. They're all different, but if you looked at them, you'd say, if you really studied them, you'd say, wait a second. They're all the same. But I'm going to leave it to you to figure out what the sameness is.
Well, I can tell you the first thing I would.
Wait, I'm not asking you to analyze the sermons yet.
No, I said the first thing I would bring to a deserted island,
What would you, what, yeah?
a boat that doesn't leak.
Oh, you wouldn't have to stay on it. Go ahead.
Well, I think what you said about, what you said about what you would take, both choices are pretty deep and all-encompassing. I mean, the first 3, if you had all that, what else could you ever need? And the second 3, if you believed in your heart, all 3, what else could you need? And I just want to end by saying that I'm reading a book right now that was written, they're both books. I read the first book by this author and I'm reading her second book, and they're both, in a way, about the same time, the same people, the same place, and they're very different.
So you have to tell us who's the author. Do you remember the names of the books?
The author is Hannah Pearlstein Marcus.
Is that,
And-
that's the book from the church, is it?
No. And she and her mother came to the States from Germany. Her mother had been in Auschwitz. She was born in 47, 2 years before me. And they came to Springfield.
Ah.
And her first book is essentially about her mother, but of course, she's an only child, her mother wasn't married, and so she's in it a lot. And then the second book is about her and her mother adapting to Springfield, and it's very different, but it's this,
Right.
in a way, it's the same story,
I'm
and
gonna guess-
I'm marveling
Mm.
at, I love the first book, and this is getting richer for me. So I think I'm okay with you having essentially the same sermon to give each time, because I've heard them and they all seem very different.
Now you're gonna be listening and say, wait a second.
I know, now I'm really gonna say it.
No. Shouldn't have said that.
But
They're
I'm
both
still-
stories of triumph.
I'm still trying to figure out how
Survival.
somebody would survive an entire week with no food, because nobody said they would bring
It's,
food.
nobody ever really means that, let's not get into that literal discussion of, pretend he had sandwiches in his pocket.
Yes. Go, anybody else? Thank you.
I think probably it's my age, but when you were talking about kindness, yeah, I think it's so true. The whole feeling of, you don't have to be, being smart is wonderful, but kindness is the makeup of life. In small ways or big ways.
I think it could be Maya Angelou who said something about, you may forget what people said, but you'll never forget how they treated you.
That's my own right.
Yeah, something about like that. And this is Heschel, by the way, who said this, who was supremely knowledgeable and wise, and he did know everything. He wrote beautifully, but for him to say, when all is said and done, I'm not so impressed by how smart somebody is, but more about how they are kind. It's an astonishing statement from him.
He is a
Very
wise
powerful.
man.
Right, but now that, to say that's a pretty astounding statement.
I'm reading a book by Bishop Curry, the presiding bishop, called Crazy Christians.
Yes, yeah.
And it has many chapters in it. And the truth of what you just said is borne out. Every chapter makes the same point about being compassionate, about inclusiveness, and the family of the Christian faith, and indeed all society, that this is the focal point where we should be centering our lives. And those of us who come to this cathedral, I think, have been uplifted each time we come through the door, not only by what we hear from the pulpit and the choir stalls, but by the company of the individuals around us who we feel are family.
Right.
It's a very special feeling, and as having been here a long time, the cast of character changes.
Somewhat.
But with a few exceptions.
But that dear presiding bishop preached at the royal wedding, you know.
I sure do, yeah.
And he certainly got across the feeling of love and acceptance.
I understand the monarch did not particularly like his,
Oh, I didn't get that impression. She
But
had,
let's talk about what he said.
I don't think we have any idea.
But you know, since you're saying that, he was also here the October before, the presiding bishop.
Coming back.
And he's coming back this October. But when he preached, he was here in the morning to preach the service, and then he came back at evensong and preached another sermon. And when he preached at the royal wedding, and I also, when he became presiding bishop, I looked up one of his sermons online. So by then I heard 4 sermons. And after the sermon at the royal wedding, I said, every single time he's preaching about love. That's what he preaches about. And he'll move it here, and he'll move it there, and he'll move it there, but that's what he preaches about. He always just preaches about love.
well, that's.
Well, I think he
So it
also,
was funny when you said that.
I think he also preaches with a smile.
Oh,
Yes.
God.
Oh,
He dropped
The
the
book
pulpit
is
fall.
it's terrible.
He what?
He was at the pulpit here, and he was going away in his charismatic style, and all of a sudden we have a pulpit fall that's a piece of cloth.
that cloth
and
is-
it hangs
Yeah,
down
he was
and
banging on
bang,
it.
it went on the floor.
He was banging on the pulpit.
Yeah, it was kind of like, it was kind of like the curtain of the temple was
It's a great moment
But I do want
for,
to say that George Schmidt, whom we prayed for this morning, had a bad fall at Reed's Landing. Yeah, and he didn't break any bones, but he's in rough, he's boozed up. Anyway, he had once said that if he didn't get anything out of Christ Church and Jim Monroe, he was convinced that God loved him. And I thought, what a neat thing to say at this time of our lives, that finally I realized God loves me. That's neat.
oh, that's very nice, that's an uplifting.
Maybe that's what you take with you.
Yeah.
That's right.
Jim's-
You know,
Jim's
I,
the reason I'm here.
This week, some of you, when we studied together, I showed you brought some quotes last year from the Pharisees, actually, that were some of the teachings of the Pharisees. And Tom asked me for, no, it was the bishop who asked me for them. So I scanned through, because I had them somewhere in the computer, so I scanned through, and I was almost going to send him, just for fun, a sheet of quotes from Francis of Assisi, and delete the Francis of Assisi part, and see if he figured it out. But if you look at Francis of Assisi, almost all the quotes, now this is interesting, I put it together a sheet of quotes. I'm no expert at Francis of Assisi, but I looked through materials, and I may have chosen just the ones I liked, but the Francis of Assisi's quotes are all about bringing faith to life. He was not about faith in and of itself, but he was about faith as living, and faith that you carry. I once put in a prayer pamphlet I made for the synagogue, something about how, it was a quote, I'm not going to quote it directly right now, but something about how the faith in this book is no use unless we carry it with us out into the street.
Right.
Something like that.
That's like,
more or less.
preach Christ.
Practice what you preach.
Preach love or preach Christ, use words if necessary.
Oh.
He also said that.
Yes, yes.
Same. Mhm.
What are you gonna say, Mike? You lose if you're about to
No,
say
yeah, I'm just trying to remember that quote from Francis, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something about,
Well, he said lots of good things,
you know.
lots of important things. And they're all around a certain theme. Most people do that. The bishop probably does speak around the
It's
thing.
always love.
So we're all gonna, he'll be back in October, he better not speak about love.
He's gonna preach
I'm sending him an email, they've got your number.
and then we're gonna sing This Little Light of Mine, it's gonna be good again.
I wasn't here.
We
for
ended
this.
up, he had people in our cathedral saying amen.
Uh-huh.
And then on top of that, at the end, he was doing stuff with This Little Light of Mine, he had everybody with their finger up going, This Little Light of Mine.
We got that sing along.
We're sitting up in the
with
choir going, are you kidding me?
him. Not me,
He did.
I was singing.
Oh, well, yeah, we were singing too, but it was just, he really changed the aspect.
Yes.
The old
So
saying.
somebody should email him and say, if you were gonna take 3 things with, what would you take?
Uh-huh.
I think someone should do it. You get Tom to do it, or
Oh,
Bishop
yeah,
Fisher.
let's get Tom to do it.
We've got we're doing a 3 things thing, so Bishop, we need to know what would your 3 things be. He might answer.
Right.
Give him some
That
time.
would be fun.
He might answer. You never know.
He seems like a fun guy.
So does anyone, since we're sitting, want to offer their own 4th thing? You don't have to come up with 3, but does someone want to offer a 4th thing? Oh, I stumped you, right?
No.
Do you mean
We
a
started the day-
fourth thing that's different?
Yeah, yes, if you got something, share it.
I mean,
That you would bring with you to a deserted island.
No, not to a desert island.
No.
That's the story I started with. A 4th thing that you would take on the journey of life, just general.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
What I would
Don't be
take-
fooled by my desert island, that's a story. No, on the journey of life, what do you want to carry with you?
I want to carry my stewardship of the creation.
What do you mean by
My own responsibility for God's world.
So, I think you say
In that the world was created and we were created and we're responsible.
and you want to carry with that sense.
And the
Sense.
concept,
I want to carry that concept as on my journey. That everything that's around me, I have a responsibility to.
You want to carry the knowledge that the environment matters, basically.
Yeah.
The environment around us, the water, the earth, the land, everything around us, the trees.
Yeah, all that.
Remember that it's God's creation
Yeah.
and we're responsible
Nice.
for it.
That'd be an awareness to carry with.
An awareness, yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking of a Swiss Army knife.
I was thinking of money.
well, you can do a lot
No, he
with
said no
that.
more islands.
All right, so this was this would be you're in advertising, you know. It all boils down to, and now what you really need. Actually, it'd be good at.
I think I would want to carry with me the certainty that God is within me and within all other people and within absolute everything I can see and touch and things I can't touch. And it's this whole, the cosmic Christ thing that we refer to from time to time, which is that God in Christ, that we are all Christ, that we are all God's cosmic creation. And we are living in that way.
You could say, well, the Hebrew Bible says we're made in the image of God. So you could say, I'd like to be able to see the image of God in everybody. I'd like to believe that.
Yes, well, it's there, I just have, it's my job.
Well, if you should,
You have to what?
It's my job and their job to make us see that in each other, but it's also in trees and leaves and floors and light and wind, and your perfect day.
Yeah. Tuesday.
That's my message.
Well, there's a beautiful, if you want to take, when Moses in Exodus chapter 3 is shepherding, if you'll recall, he notices that there's something that catches his eye, looks like a flame, and he sees a bush, and when he goes off the beaten path, he notices that that bush is burning, but somehow it's not consumed. And then when he comes closer to it, there's a voice from the bush, and the bush says, take off your shoes because the ground you're standing on is holy. So if you want to universalize that, to make it more than just a Hebrew Bible story about Moses at a particular time in a particular place, you could say that the ground on which we stand, all the ground, wherever we are, that's always holy. The bush burns, but life is unconsumed. The bush burns, but it's unconsumed, and that's an awareness that everywhere we go, it's always the same, right?
I like the analogy, yeah.
Yeah. So we're always standing on holy ground. That's a little bit overwhelming, but also empowering and beautiful, and very hard to bear in mind. I was once in a conversation, study group of some sort at some convention. And you know, conventions are always in big hotels. So this is in a Marriott, unnamed, I don't remember where. No, it doesn't matter, because all the Marriotts are all the same. So it was in some city, in some Marriott, in some room where we had a session, and it was in a session in the basement of some Marriott, in some room, where there were no windows, and it was a concrete floor, and whoever was leading it wanted to explore something about holiness or spirituality. So he said, for purposes of this setting, I want you to take your shoes off and feel the ground beneath you. So of course, if you took your shoes off, all you felt was, didn't have a carpet, you just felt it was the concrete, like, you felt the carpet, which is like a quarter of an inch thick, but it was concrete underneath you in a windowless room. So this was the least spiritual place you could ever be in this Marriott in a no-name city, at a city yet to be named. But I remember the event because he had us close our eyes, and if you did imagine it, and your shoes were off, and your feet were, you could feel your soles of your feet on something instead of just the bottom of the shoe, then if you did imagine it, then even that completely unspiritual place could become spiritual. You had to imagine it, and your eyes had to be closed, and you had to listen and breathe and think, and it became a beautiful sacred place. But it wasn't just in and of itself, so it required an act of imagination or commitment or
Right.
faith. That was a great place because it really required an act of imagination.
So do I have to?
Oh, well, go sacredly. Go holy. Well, let's take a couple more minutes anyway, because some of you may have to go. So, does anyone want to add another something to take with? Because we can all take, we're allowed to take with more than 3 things. Unless it's, maybe Tom said that's all you could take with. I'll say one thing, then maybe someone will add one more thing. I was thinking, why did Tom choose 3 things? Because I was thinking if Tom had asked me to just take some things with, but I've chosen 3. So did you think of that because of the Trinity?
That's it. That's what it is.
I don't know.
It's either Trinity or Goldilocks.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's Goldilocks.
Okay.
Yeah, folklore.
Goldilocks,
So,
yes,
so
it
much
is.
in folklore is, there's 3 things.
It is a magic number.
Yeah. Well, 3 things. I probably on my own I wouldn't have thought of take 1 thing or 2. 3's not a good number, but I did wonder about the 3 things because it corresponds to the Trinity anyway. But does somebody want to ask? It's okay. That was a thought. That was just a thought. Why 3 and not 7? So 7's too much. So does anyone want to offer one other something or thought they might take with?
Friendly Vienna mocha swirl.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And with that, I think on a sweet ending, you know what I would take with, then we're gonna end. I like, oh, wait a second. It's from JB's Ice Cream, which is in East Long Meadow. I would take with their mud pie.
Oh, what was that?
So if you haven't tried it, you just have to go to JB's in Springfield. It's a great flavor. You just have, I can't even tell you what it is. It's mud pie. So if you go there directly right now and skip lunch, they're open and they're probably scooping mud pie. And that would make your day, and you would need nothing else for the day.
Is that where you're
Have a
going?
great sacred day, everybody.
You too.
Oh,